Welcome back to the Geopolitical Compass. Today we have something truly captivating to discuss. You know how sometimes the world around us starts to feel eerily similar to those dystopian novels we all read back in school? Well, that's exactly the theme we're exploring today, and I'm thrilled to have our expert Zara here to help unpack it all.
Absolutely. I'm genuinely excited about this topic because the connections between Orwell's 1984 and our current reality are just astonishing. It's incredible to see how many of Orwell's predictions are playing out in real life.
I recently came across a thought-provoking article titled From 1984 to Obey by Bob Cavan III. It draws a compelling comparison between Apple's legendary 1984 Super Bowl ad and the company's current role in the tech world. Initially, Apple was seen as a liberating force against conformity, but now it seems to have become the very thing it once opposed.
Yes, it's a fascinating perspective on the current state of affairs. The article also discusses Apple's recent collaboration with Elon Musk's Starlink, which raises concerns about a shift toward corporate-controlled connectivity. This partnership brings up important issues regarding privacy and the increasing power of tech companies in political matters, especially with the recent changes under President Trump. Cavan highlights how the erosion of personal freedoms is speeding up, with corporate interests merging more closely with government authority.
In light of this, Zara, could you elaborate on why this article and Orwell's 1984 resonates so strongly with our current situation?
Sure, we're in a time where surveillance and information control are becoming deeply embedded in our everyday lives. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about how society is starting to reflect some of the dystopian warnings that Orwell laid out. It's quite alarming, don't you think?
Let's delve into 1984 itself. What key themes stand out to you?
One of the most striking themes is the concept of constant surveillance. The famous phrase, "Big Brother is watching you," encapsulates this idea. It's not merely about being observed. It's about how that surveillance influences behavior and thought.
I've always been curious about how this control mechanism operates in the book. Can you shed some light on that?
Right. So in 1984, there's this whole system of control that works through multiple layers. First, you've got the physical surveillance through the telescreens. But then, and this is really fascinating, there's this whole concept of doublethink, where people are basically trained to hold two contradictory beliefs at the same time. And the party constantly rewrites history to match whatever they're saying in the present.
That's pretty intense. What about the way they handle truth in the book?
Oh my goodness, this is absolutely critical. The Ministry of Truth, which ironically spreads lies, operates under three main slogans. War is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. The party wields power not just by controlling information, but also by manipulating the very language people use to think, what they call newspeak.
How does the party actually enforce all of this?
That's the insidious part. It's not just about physical control, it's psychological too. They've created a society where individuals monitor each other. The thought police and junior spies are chilling examples of how people are made to betray their own thoughts and memories. It's not just about controlling actions, it's about controlling reality itself.
So when we look at surveillance today, how close are we getting to what Orwell imagined?
It's actually pretty mind-blowing. We're carrying around these devices, our phones that are basically voluntary telescreens, and they're tracking everything, our location, our browsing habits, our conversations.
That's pretty unsettling. What kind of data are we actually talking about?
It's everything. Every click, purchase, and message. Companies gather extensive data about our sleep patterns, exercise habits, and social interactions. But here's the thing. It goes way beyond just collecting information.
What do you mean by that?
Well, these systems aren't just passive observers. They actively use AI and algorithms to predict and influence our behavior. And what's really wild is that we're basically participating in our own surveillance willingly. We're posting our lives on social media, using smart home devices, wearing fitness trackers. Hey, listeners, we just want to take a moment to ask you to subscribe and
Yes, please subscribe and and give us the opportunity to provide you with insight on our shaping geopolitics in these shifting times.
We really can't do this without your support and can't stress how important it is to us to give these insights, and please comment below.
Your comments and suggested topics are great to read, and shape the voice you want to hear. Now back to our podcast. How do these systems compare to what Orwell was warning us about?
In some respects, they're more sophisticated than what Orwell envisioned. Instead of an overtly oppressive regime, we have a subtle network of surveillance disguised as convenience and entertainment. Most people don't even realize the extent of it. We're giving away our privacy piece by piece under the guise of improving our lives.
Are there any specific examples that really stand out to you?
Definitely. Like, think about smart speakers. They're literally microphones in our homes that are always listening. And facial recognition technology is becoming more prevalent in public spaces. Then there's social credit systems in some countries that actually track and rate citizens' behavior. You know what I mean? It's like we're building the infrastructure for total surveillance, but we're doing it voluntarily, bit by bit.
Speaking of control, I've been thinking about how information spreads these days. How do social media platforms actually decide what we see?
These platforms are using these incredibly complex algorithms that are basically deciding everything we see. And what's really wild is that they're constantly analyzing our behavior. Every single click, every pause, every interaction.
That's pretty intense. How does this actually affect what information reaches us?
So these algorithms create what we call echo chambers, right? And they're basically showing us more of what we already agree with, what we already like. But here's the thing, it goes way deeper than that. These systems are actually shaping our entire worldview without us even realizing it.
Can you provide examples of how this operates in practice?
Oh, absolutely. Think about how your social media feed works. And what's really crucial is that it's not just showing you random posts from your friends. The algorithm is constantly making decisions about what content to amplify, what to suppress. It's like if you engage with certain types of content, you'll see more of it, while other perspectives just disappear from your feed.
So how does this compare to the kind of information control we see in 1984?
In some ways, it's more effective than Orwell's vision. Instead of a blatant ministry of truth, we have invisible algorithms subtly guiding our attention. What's fascinating is that we often don't realize how our perceptions are being manipulated.
What role does content moderation play in this?
That's a significant aspect. These platforms wield immense power over what constitutes acceptable speech. Their decisions impact billions, but these choices are often opaque and influenced by political pressures, commercial interests, and inherent biases.
You know what's been on my mind? The way all this affects our personal freedom. How much of what we do is actually our choice anymore?
Oh my goodness, right? This is actually something I think about constantly. And what's really fascinating is how these systems of control are so subtle. Take digital IDs, for instance. They're convenient, but also track everything we do.
Could you give us some specific examples of how this plays out in real life?
So, think about your phone, and it's not just about tracking your location anymore. It's about tracking your entire digital footprint, your purchases, your health data, your social connections. Every time you use a delivery app or check your fitness tracker or even just walk past certain stores with your phone in your pocket, you're leaving this massive trail of data.
That's actually pretty concerning. What about the impact on our day-to-day decisions?
This is where it gets really wild, right? Because these systems aren't just passive observers anymore. They're actively shaping our behavior. And what's really crucial to understand is that they're using all this data to predict and influence our choices. Think about how your Maps app suggests routes or how your banking app nudges you about spending. It's all designed to guide our behavior in specific ways.
So what can people actually do about this?
We can't completely opt out of these systems anymore. They're just too embedded in our daily lives. But, and this is really important, we can be more conscious about how we interact with them. It's about making intentional choices about what apps we use, what permissions we grant, and being really aware of how these systems might be influencing our decisions. It's about finding that balance between convenience and maintaining our personal autonomy.
We've covered a lot today, and I'm curious about your final thoughts. How relevant do you think these dystopian warnings are for us now?
They're absolutely crucial for understanding where we are right now. And And what's really fascinating is that Orwell wasn't just writing fiction, you know what I mean? He was giving us this incredible framework to understand power and control and how they evolve.
This has been such an eye-opening discussion for the geopolitical compass, honestly. Any final thoughts on what our listeners should take away from this?
Here's the thing that I really want everyone to understand. It's not about being paranoid or completely disconnecting from technology. Like it's about being aware and intentional. And what's super important is that we stay informed, stay critical, and most importantly, stay engaged in conversations like this one.
Any practical tips for our listeners?
Absolutely. First off, educate yourself about privacy tools and digital rights. Don't accept things at face value. Question the systems around you, read diverse sources, and remember that awareness is the first step toward protecting our freedoms. These dystopian narratives aren't just warnings about what could happen. They're reflections of what's already unfolding in subtle ways. If you're interested in reading the article from 1984 to Obey, How Musk Swapped the Ball of Worms for an Apple, we've included a link in the description.
Did I say how much I love that title, Swapped the Ball of Worms for an Apple?
Oh, I know it's just great. But yes, if you want to take deeper dive, check it out. And we will see you on the next installment of The Geopolitical Compass. Thank you.